In a historic 232 to 180 vote, the United States House of Representatives has passed a resolution in favor of DC statehood. Now, this is a really big deal, in my opinion, especially as someone who lives in the DC suburbs. This is something that's really exciting. If you don't know, the DC license plate literally reads "in taxation without representation." And so it's really something that is a really big deal, especially where I live. But overall, this is historic. I'm excited by this, even though I like it's probably not going to pass the Senate. Chris, I'm excited by this.
Yeah, this is fantastic. So that's right. It's not going to get through the Senate, and Trump is obviously going to stop it if he gets a chance to. But I'm on the side that says, you know what, McConnell's going to stop it. It's never even going to get a vote in the Senate. You still got to pass it through the House because I think this is an instance where, and I don't think it's just showboating. I think it's meaningful, but I think the message needs to be put out there so that the people who will be voting in November can say, oh, I clearly can see that there is a group of people who are at least trying to do the kinds of things that I agree with. And then there's
Hmm.
this group on the other side that are basically just coming up with, I think it's absolutely ridiculous that everything, especially this, has to get politicized to a point where you can't even have a genuine conversation about people on the, from the other side of the aisle about this kind of a thing.
Historically throughout like American history, if you make a principled case for why someone should be treated equally, why you should extend the vote to a particular group of American citizens, that is a winning argument. It might not win right away, but that is something which people are open to and people can be persuaded to much more easily than actually, fundamentally sort of changing something. Because let's keep it real. Let's keep it real. This is not fundamentally changing anything. This is simply allowing the 700,000 members
Right.
of DC, 46% of whom are African American, to be allowed to vote in for representatives in the House of Representatives and in the Senate. So that's all that this is. This isn't something that I think that a lot of people are going to have any kind of serious objection to, because personally, look, maybe you're watching this video and you can present to me an argument I haven't heard before, but I have never yet heard a principled objection to DC
Right.
statehood yet. I mean, this is, to me at least, this is just common sense, right? Like, these are
Right.
people who are Americans, 700,000 people, who, by the way, 700,000 people, population of DC, more people than two states, who,
Right.
of course, representing four senators, right?
Right.
So, this is a situation where these people do not have representation, yet of course can be taxed, yet of course, as we saw in the case of Donald Trump, could send in the military and has full control over the state, or over the not state, over over the city. So this is again, this is a major win. This is really exciting, and it shows a lot of progress, I think, compared to 1993, the last time this measure was considered, when it failed in a 2-to-1 margin.
Yeah, and I think Trump kind of gave the game away when he came out and, here's his quote: "They want to do that so they can pick up two automatic Democrats. It's 100% Democrat, basically. So why would the Republicans ever do that?" Well, the answer is because they're people who are in the democracy and they deserve representation in the
Right.
democracy. I mean, he's giving away, well, that's not how they see it. How they see it is it's all just a big political game and we're all the pawns. But there's 700,000 people who are paying taxes, and it looks really lopsided if you look at the financials for DC, where they pay a lot in taxes, and yet they're not really getting back what they should be for proportionately for their size.
Exactly. There's a lot of things that could be invested in when it comes to DC, a lot of funds which would become available to DC if they were to become a state. So I suppose if you were to have a principled objection and say that all government spending is bad, therefore we should object to, allowing DC to become a state so that we don't spend more government money on them, that's probably the best thing that you might be able to come up with. But Chris, you mentioned there how Donald Trump says that the reason why he doesn't want to have statehood is because it gives two more Democratic senators. That's obviously an instance where polarization is causing this kind of just
Right.
objection. But I also want to pose to you, because I was thinking about this, and it seems that in some ways we have polarization to thank for allowing DC statehood to become an issue like this. I mean, you're looking at
Yeah.
a situation right now where, you look back to 1994. I know that's not 1993, but in 1994, it was 39% of Democrats and only 26% of Republicans said that they thought that discrimination was the main reason that blacks had a difficulty or had trouble getting ahead. That's how the polling was worded at the time. You poll now in 2017, you're looking at a massive gap of 64% of Democrats and 14% of Republicans. So the number of Republicans who thought that discrimination was the cause of black people, having a difficulty getting ahead has gone down. Whereas, of course, Democrats there, I mean, just a massive skyrocketing. We've never seen anything like this in the history of this country, Chris, where we have one major political party where the entire party is in line and on board with, at least in principle, seeing issues of discrimination. And I do think that that's relevant, and I do think that that's related to this DC statehood thing, because especially considering the context of this push, right? Like, keep in mind,
Right.
the reason why this happened was because Donald Trump sent in the military to DC. And so it came on the radar to a lot of people, to a lot of Democrats, like, hey, wait a minute, why is Donald Trump able to do this, but he wouldn't be able to do it out in Wyoming? There's something up here, and that's why this thing came to a vote.
Yeah, and you make a good point about this polarization being a double-edged sword that kind of works both ways. And I think part of, a lot of things now are a double-edged sword because it depends how you use them. But a lot of that, I think social media is the same way, right? I think a lot of the reason that people are so much aware of this kind of prejudice and discrimination is because we see it, right? We see it on Facebook, and we see it on the computer when we go on there, and we're seeing that the atrocities that are taking place. And then you can't really deny it anymore. It's like, oh, I guess people really are being treated. You can't watch the George
Right.
Floyd video and go, no, there's no discrimination going on here. I mean, it's pretty clear cut, and it's in your face if it's popping up on our media and stuff like that.
Right. And the hope is maybe we can put this bill to the vote every single year,
Right.
right? Every single year we bring this bill back up so that it has to come back to Americans' minds. Oh,
Right.
DC's not a state.
Right.
DC's not a state. DC's not a state. Because look, me living in Northern Virginia, I see it all the time. I drive around and I don't know that it's a quarter, but I'd say at least 15% of license plates are DC license plates. So I literally see it at every single
Right.
stoplight, right? So, but if you don't live in the DC suburbs, if you don't live in this area, yeah, you're not going to see that. You don't think about something like that if you're living a couple thousand miles away from the city of
Right.
DC. And I mean, it's irrelevant. Like, it would be irrelevant to you, but if it's constantly coming to a vote and we're constantly talking about it, that's how you can begin to push. That's how you can
And,
begin to
yeah.
start changing people's mind. And maybe we have polarization to thank for that.
And I think that's one of the areas we need to attack harder. And this is one of the reasons why, I'm going to end up, I don't think Biden's a great individual, but I really would like to see everything go blue in November, even the Senate, because I think it's really important that bills that protect democracy start getting passed. So that is, if you're an American citizen, you should be getting to exercise your right to vote. And I think this is one of those areas that is about democracy, which is where, if DC statehood sort of gives that area more democracy. It gives them a chance to exercise their opinions and how their lives are being run. And I think that's one of the goals, or it should be one of the goals in those next 4 years, is making sure that we're attacking all the ways in which that democracy is being eroded.
Well, I definitely agree with you that I do think that obviously, like, a blue Senate would be obviously better than a red Senate. That said, I'm a little bit more cynical than you, in the sense that I'm maybe slightly less confident than you are that if the Democrats took over the Senate or took over, or while maintaining control of the House and took over the presidency, that the Democrats would even fight for the same things that they have, that they claim to be fighting for right now. I mean, I look, and maybe I'm just cynicized by what happened here in Virginia. Virginia, we recently swept, and in the state house, we got it all blue. And guess what? Now we can't even bring union legislation up to a vote that the Democrats were supposedly in favor of last time around. Why? Why? Because what was the cost that we had to pay in order to get that win? We had to move into suburb areas that were wealthier and areas that, their political opinions were not what the Democratic Party was. And so now, yeah, we have power, but the Democrats they're not doing anything with that power. The best thing that they did was pass a couple symbolic votes on gun legislation, which caused a massive protest, which, of course the police weren't there to stomp down on. But I mean, nothing really
Yeah.
happened. Nothing really happened.
Yeah, and I guess I just have to hope that they would pass the same type of bills that they are now. HR 1, they need to try to pass again. The that first bill they passed that had all the voting rights stuff in it. You're right. This bill needs to, for the statehood, needs to get brought up again next year and pushed through. And
Hmm.
hopefully there'll be a blue Senate that at least it will see a vote. I mean, at least hopefully there'll be, if there's a blue Senate, there'll at least be a vote on the thing. I would hope. But
Well,
yeah, you're
yeah.
right in that it may not go that way. And by the way, have you seen this video of Tom Cotton talking in front of Congress about he's basically laying out the ridiculous arguments about why DC should not be a statehood. And one of the things he throws out there is what a weird shape DC would be with like 250 sides or something like that. And it's like that's what they do with all the gerrymandering, right? I mean,
Yeah. Oh my god. I see. I didn't see that one, but that is ridiculous. What shape it's going to be? I'll tell you. There's some weird shapes on the East Coast. Now, towards the Midwest, and towards the West, the shapes look nice because they're just squares.
box.
But out here, I mean, you look at Kentucky. There's like a weird like ridge. There's, I mean, they're all weird shapes. They're all weird shapes. Then you start to see them and you get used to them. I mean, that's my argument to you, Tom Cotton. I'm objecting to your anti-shape argument for DC statehood. Real rigorous
Yeah.
debate here. Real rigorous debate here. Well, Chris, thanks so much for joining us, and make sure you guys go check out his channel. It's Political Perspective. He's got some great stuff over there, all kinds of great stuff coming out every single day. Make sure you go and check it out. Chris, thanks so much for joining us to talk about DC statehood.